Okay, so yes, body work super helpful, but the way the body works, the best model for looking at a body, whether we're talking like the way I contribute to my horse's health and well-being is through training and movement. That
Hmm.
is something we almost categorize as being separate from healthcare. But
Yeah.
the body is a closed system. So if the movement is dysfunctional, all systems are compromised.
Hmm.
And so, like muscle tightness that a massage therapist is coming to release, the tensegrity model is sort of the best model for a body. And so, what this is actually a tensegrity model of the human pelvis.
Oh,
It doesn't look like a pelvis at all, but here's the thigh bones here, right? And it
yep.
sort of walks and moves like a human pelvis. So functionally, right? It
Yep.
this is a human pelvis. And so
Yep. Replicates it. Yep.
a tensegrity, the tensegrity model, it means a structure that is based on tensional or tensile integrity. So the
Hmm.
tension in the rubber bands are what keep
Yep.
the sticks in place.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
so this could be like a geodesic dome building, a suspension bridge, but it's the model of construction we use with bodies
Hmm.
because all of these wooden sticks represent the skeleton,
Hmm.
right? And the
Yep.
skeleton without the muscles and soft tissues, like if you see a human skeleton, we have to wire it together. It doesn't stand up on its
Yes.
own, right?
Yep. Yep.
So what keeps the skeleton, which are called the compression elements, are the tension elements. And what
Hmm.
allows movement is a change in the soft tissues, which moves
Yep.
the bones, right?
Yep.
So
Yep.
imagine like when we look at Pablo, right?
Hmm.
If this is the central line of the spine, notice that this model can sort of move and adapt around that central line without it moving very much. You see that?
Yep. Yep.
So, but if it's tweaked, say it's crooked, right?
Yep.
Once the center gets crooked, now I have too much looseness over here and I have
Hmm.
excessive tightness over here.
Yep. Yep.
So when the body worker comes, if it's a massage therapist, they feel around the body and they sort of go, oh, these are nice and loose. Oh, these are too
Hmm.
tight,
Hmm.
right? With the idea being if you release the tension, that somehow it should pull the bones back in place. But
Yep.
it, but the bones are what are actually are moving the rubber bands.
Yeah.
Does that make
Yeah.
sense? And
Yeah.
so
It does. Yep.
what we're working on in training is stabilizing this center line. So let's say we have a crooked horse, right, where
Mhm.
the center line is crooked.
Yep.
That's going to
Like that
throw
one.
off all this tension and it's going to change the way the legs move.
Yeah.
Does that make
Yeah.
sense?
Okay.
So
Yeah. Total sense. Yep.
so that's why we work on the spinal functions, whether we're riding or doing groundwork, because as soon as that central line of force through the axial skeleton is stable, then the body can move around that stability, changing tone in the muscle, moving the
Hmm.
legs, moving the appendicular skeleton,
Yep.
and still stay stable and resilient. So this
Hmm.
tensegrity model is how you look at a body. And just
Yeah.
because you have a lot of tightness over here, the
Hmm.
problem is sometimes the looseness over here.
Yeah. Okay.
Or
Yep.
if this system breaks down, it's not usually because I applied pressure to, hang on, tip that down a little. It's not because I
Yep.
applied pressure here. So, like,
No.
for instance, we were talking about storms. So, if I get a wind shear against one side of my roof. Where
Mm-hmm.
that force impact hits my roof in a regular structure is where the damage is going to occur, right?
Mm-hmm.
But
Yep.
if
Yep.
something hits this structure, you see the force
Yeah.
is distributed throughout the structure.
Yeah.
So when we have an injury or soreness on a horse, it doesn't mean that's the area that's actually affected. It could be way over here that the pain issue is
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
it's an integrated system.
Mm-hmm.
Does that
Yep,
make
that makes sense.
sense?
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
And so that's where, body work, like regular pain relief, say Equiox or Butte or things we do with our vet or joint injections. To me, all of that pain relief is only necessary if the horse really is painful in motion, right?
yep,
Or to use as pain management while you're getting a change. And I look at body work the same way. It can maybe untie a knot here or release something that's been chronically tight or help the bones sort of remember where they're supposed to go. But
yep,
the arrangement of how these bones organize in motion is dictated by the nervous system,
yeah.
what we call muscle memory. So the only way
Mm-hmm.
to change that is during motion, we're guiding, like if a horse is crooked like this, we're going to feel a lot
Mm-hmm.
of force on one side,
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
right? And we'll
yeah,
take a look at the long reins because the long reins is where you start to feel these changes through the body without being able to see them.
yeah, okay. Yep.
Does that make sense?
Yeah,
And
that makes sense.
and
Yep.
that's why like we can be completely crooked, but we can still be functional.
Mm.
But there's going to
Yeah.
be wear and tear because the body can adapt around that crooked center and still function. But there's
Mm-hmm.
going to be a lot of stress on some parts of the body, too little stress or some atrophy in other parts of the body because it's all sort of askew, but it's still not falling over. So we think we're
Yeah,
good.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, that makes sense.
But no, that's a good
Very good.
question. Yeah. And so that to me is the whole point of what I do with training is changing that pattern in the nervous system for the coordination. And
Mm-hmm.
the axis of our horse's body and our body is the skull, spine, and pelvis. So if we get the axis sort of mechanically doing its job, that changes the muscle use throughout the body. It changes
Yeah,
all the soft
yeah.
tissue, tendon and ligament strain throughout the body. It
Mm-hmm.
influences joint function and it also changes what they call leg kinematics or the leg placement. So
Yeah, okay.
I don't worry about any of those details. And
Mm-hmm.
we sort of watch the use of the head and neck as a visual guide to sort of know what the skull, spine, and pelvis are doing. But
Yeah,
ultimately, we feel what's going on inside more than we can see it.
yeah,
And
okay.
yeah,
Yep.
so I'm excited to look at you working with, is it Stitch on the
Oh,
long reins?
it's Stitch. Have you seen it yet? It's quite embarrassing.
No, but I
It
take
was a
heart.
real
Like I
schmozzle.
I worked through the ugliest part of my learning curve on the long reins by myself in the privacy of my own arena and went, oh my God, this is
Well,
a big hot mess.
yeah, yeah, and this is probably our maybe our fourth attempt.
Okay.
Um, and it has improved, even though you wouldn't think it when you see this one, but it started off way worse. So
No,
yeah,
it's a very tricky, and especially the way I do it, it's a very tricky groundwork technique to learn.
yeah, and not having the surf single on there when you can thread the reins through, that's quite tricky. You know, having to keep them up
Yes.
at the right height, especially I think being doing it from the center of the circle. Uh,
Yes.
Maybe when we get to the stage of doing it from behind, it's going to be a little bit easier to keep them up. But yeah, it was
Yeah,
tricky.
it's difficult either way, but the reason I kind of put people through that torturous learning thing is number one, it's a bit safer without a surcingle. It's
Yeah, okay.
safer for the horse if we don't use a
Yeah.
surcingle. And
Is
by
that
the
because if they get away, they can get more tangled, or you mean it's more leverage on their face
it's
with the
more that
surcingle?
it's a little bit of both. So your safety valve working on the long reins, if a horse ever gets faster than you can keep up with or freaks out, is basically you're lunging them on an inside rein, on the
Yeah,
inside with an outside rein that you could always let go of, right?
yeah.
When you have a surcingle on, if you use that same circle as a way to spend extra energy, you're creating a 90-degree angle of leverage from
Yeah, of course.
from their head to
Back
the
to the horse.
surcingle to you becomes a
Yeah.
90-degree angle of leverage, and
Mhm.
it's can flip a horse over.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's a
Wow. Okay.
serious amount of leverage. And I think that's why long reins became a bit of a lost art, is because when you
Right.
use the surcingle, which is very traditional, you don't realize with a horse that's rearing or bucking or bolting, pulling hard even on one rein can quite easily flip them over. And
Wow.
so
Okay.
yeah, I just don't mess with it. The biggest benefit too, even though it feels like you're, hand weaving a rug when you're starting with the long reins.
Oh, it's all over the place. Yeah.
Yeah, by the time you start to get the feel for it, it massively improves your rein contact for riding. Like you really
Yeah.
start to use the long reins like we should under saddle as transmitters of information. So once
Hmm.
you start to get the feel for them, and it's tricky because you need just enough tension to not let the long reins fall below the hocks or the middle joints, but
Hmm.
but never get so tight that they start coming up the middle of the barrel. So you're constantly
Yep.
adjusting the length in order to
Yep.
keep the right amount of tension.
Hmm.
And that then you're not restricting the horse. You're just creating a transmitter where you can feel what the horse is doing and you can give guidance like a rein aid to guide their balance. But
Yeah.
I haven't watched it. Let's hit play. It looks like it's about a 9-minute video. Um,
Yeah. Yeah. This is 9 minutes this side, and I think we did about 10 minutes the other side.
okay. So he's getting the idea to go forward. Yeah,
Sort of.
so the first thing is, let me pause here, is right, what you're sort of doing is getting yourself into a lunging position. And so he's
Yes.
just turning and facing you. So when I say go
Yes.
in close, I mean take your body right in like you're going to mount in the saddle. Go right in.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
And go in behind the shoulder, just like if you
Yep.
were going to step up in the stirrup and get on, go right in behind the shoulder and then keep
Yep.
tapping until he starts to move forward and away from you. But if you're out this far, like he's
Yep.
going to turn and face, you're going to circle around and it turns into like,
Yep.
yeah,
As you'll see in a minute, that's
yeah,
exactly what it turns into.
yeah. But yeah, if you were a little closer, where if he tried to turn, he can't get you out of position.
Yeah, okay.
Do you know what I
Yep.
mean? So when you go physically closer, when you shorten the distance between your body and his body, it's easier for the horse to figure out to go forward. But he's being a really
Hmm.
good sport about it. Yeah.
He is. Yeah. He's like, what are you doing, Mum? For God's sake.
So the other thing that'll help you tremendously is drop all of those loops in your hand,
Yeah.
right? So you're trying to manage the loops, but the part that gives you control is the part between your hand and his head. And you see how frequently the
Yeah.
part of the line between his head and your hand, you're busy managing the loops, and that part's getting slack.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So if you drop all that excess, just kind of throw it to the ground and just
Yep.
hold what you can feel in your hand. So there, if you went
Yep.
in close to him, right next to the
Yep.
rope on his back, he'll start going forward. Because it's not like lunging. It's more like riding.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. So you're kind of like approaching it like you would a lunge line and a whip. And
Yeah, that's what I was. Yeah.
yeah, it's much
Okay.
more like riding. So you want to be in there where you would be with the saddle. And then
Mm-hmm.
even as you get that line behind his tail, if you start close, but like
Mm-hmm.
the red line that you have or the pink one, all of
Mm-hmm.
that excess, you could just drop all that excess out of your hand.
Okay.
And
So the outside rein, just let it hold onto it, but just let the tail loose.
yeah. And if
Yeah.
the inside rein is coiled up, that's the one that's going to wrap around your feet if you're not mindful.
Yes.
So the one
Yep.
to his head, the line to his head, treat it like a lunge line or a lead rope. And
Mm-hmm.
then the one over the back, sort of treat it at first like you're just getting him used to a rope over his back. But you can
Yep.
let all that excess sort of drag. But he's being really good about this. So the lunging has paid off because he goes, I think she wants me to lunge. And so he's
Yeah.
just sort of doing it.
So what are you trying to do here?
Yeah. Now that you've dropped it, you see, that'll just be easier for you to manage.
Then I pick it up again. I'm paranoid.
Yeah. And once you start, like you don't have to stand still in the center. You can kind of walk with him.
Yep.
Um, and you can, yeah, you're doing a really good job. Like you're figuring it out. He's, very confident with what you're doing. It's not bothering him a bit, and you're getting it done. So good for you.
It gets a
So
little bit worse. It gets a bit worse in a minute.
so once it gets behind his legs, he's not too sure.
Yeah, and then it drops quite low at one stage, and he stops it. He's a bit worried about it.
Okay.
Uh,
So
yeah,
right where you have it is perfect. I would just keep it loose and let it sort of work its way down, basically into the crook of the hind leg. The gaskin is sort of what you're aiming for.
yeah,
So
yeah.
just above the hock in the curve of the hind leg. And if
Mm-hmm.
it's too tight, it can go up and get stuck under their tail, which is never a good
Yes,
thing.
did that too. Yep.
Yep. And if it gets too loose and it falls below the hock, they can easily put a leg over it or step on it. And that's why we start this in the halter because we're having that
Mm,
learning curve.
mm.
And
Hey, oh, sorry. Yep.
basically, as it's falling down behind the tail, you're
Yep.
you already need to, instead of lifting your arm, there you go, shorten it up a little bit. So
Yep.
because we're thinking we have to lift it, everybody does that and lifts the
Yeah,
arm.
I'm like this, walking around like that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a matter of shortening the line rather than lifting the line.
Yeah. Okay.
So
Yeah.
as soon as it's too loose, you shorten it, one or both at this point, because basically the closer you are to him, the easier the
Mm-hmm.
reins are to manage. So like both of your reins are just too long right at this moment.
Yeah.
So if
Yeah.
you
So
shorten,
even
sorry,
if as I was walking around like that, would you'd want me quite close to him, as if like I don't know, about that far away from his body, holding both reins,
it would
walking around on a circle.
it
Is
would
that what I
be
should be doing?
easier. It would be easier for you to learn
Yep.
if you're a little closer. Like as soon as you have to lift up your arm on the inside rein, just shorten it up.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yeah.
just
Okay.
shorten it up because he's going to have a hard time balancing, and he's comfortable with you behind him. So that's an immediate
Yeah.
option.
So I
Like,
could perhaps start going behind him.
yeah, and that may be
Yep.
easier for both of you to learn because you really can let the reins drag behind you while you're walking
Yep.
forward. They won't get tangled up On a circle,
Mm-hmm.
they can get a little tangled around our legs, and so the inside rein is the one we have to be mindful of.
Yep. Yep. This will
So
go
the
over a
other,
bit pear-shaped.
yeah, the other thing to consider is when you have two reins on, like here, you're trying to lift it up. Had you just shortened it, it would have come up sooner.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
you were
Yep.
trying to rearrange your position and lift your arm. And
Yeah,
so,
I was run around like
yeah, and so as soon as he kind of hikes a leg or kicks out, it's going to he's going to get it underneath the leg and you have to start over.
yeah.
So, yeah, this is how we all learn. So don't worry about it at all. You're actually doing great. And he's so confident that you could probably, like the introduction phase, you really have to do once, maybe three times. Once the horse is confident with the long reins, you just put him on and go to work. And so
Yeah, okay.
you're already kind of there, and you can experiment walking with him from the inside, pausing and doing a circle, or just go directly behind the tail and ground drive him. You could play with
Yeah.
all
In
three.
straight lines,
Mm,
do you think straight lines are better, or do you want me to put him on a circle?
no, I would do straight lines would be easier to start with.
Yep.
Yeah, and especially it's like the issue you had, the reason we started with lunging is he was kind of pushy when you were close, and then he was kind of too fast when he was far away. You've
Yes.
really worked through that. Like he's so much kinder to you than
Mm,
what you started with. He's really tolerant, letting you learn and not sort of taking advantage and getting defensive. Like to
yeah.
look mildly annoyed and just try to outfox you is pretty funny. Like he's not
Yeah.
being mean
It's
about
like,
it. Yeah,
it's
he's
like
not
he's just
being mean
rolling his
about it.
eyes at me. It's like, oh, what are you doing?
Yeah. So do you
Yeah.
see how the farther away you are, and let me just pause this so I can maybe even show you. I
Yep.
think where are the tools? Here they are. Okay. So I'm going to try to draw a line,
Mm-hmm.
but basically this distance that you're at here,
Yep.
that's why he has room to turn and face you,
Yeah, yeah. Okay.
right? So if you cut that distance in half,
Yep.
yeah, then
Yep.
if he bends his neck, he can't turn and face you. And if
Yeah.
you're closer, instead of trying to use this hand to get the
Mm-hmm.
rope to make him go forward, you want to be close enough that you could maybe tap him with your hand.
Okay.
Do you know what I mean? Just like as if you were
Yeah.
riding.
Yeah. Yep. Yep.
So,
Okay.
so at this red line, you would be more on what I would call a lead rope length to start
Yes.
with. Yeah.
Yep.
And if
Okay.
you're on a lead rope length and you go right into his body, like if I were working him, I would be here.
Yeah. Okay. Yep.
Yep. But at least here.
Yeah. And then once he's okay going around with the rope kind of at the back of his legs, and then you gradually just move to the back
Yeah,
behind his tail and then go straight.
yes, like the reason you want to start on the inside and get him going forward is if he ever took off faster than you could walk, you have
Mm-hmm.
to know how to use the inside rein, loosen the outside rein, and put him on a circle around you. Because
Yeah.
if you can't run as fast as he can, then you get in trouble if you only know how to work from behind him. So that's
Yeah. Okay.
why the introduction phase is from the inside, like we would use a circle, right?
Mm-hmm.
But in your mind, you're thinking of it at like a lunging exercise. And just think of it
Mm.
as if you're on the inside of him, it's almost as if you're riding. And
Yeah. Okay.
if you're directly behind him, it's like you're driving in a cart. It's the same
Yeah.
thing.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So let's play a little more and see. But when he starts, like this is the payoff for all the lunging work you did, is they tolerate our learning curve so much more graciously.
Yeah.
And it doesn't scare them. They don't get defensive. They don't get snarky because they're feeling better. But do you see how
Yeah.
you're
Yeah.
making a big circle around him?
Yeah. He's lunging me.
Yeah. So if you walked straight in to where you could physically put your hand on his back where the saddle goes, that's how close you want to be.
Yep.
Then you could tap
Yep.
the back with your hand, and he
Mm-hmm.
couldn't, he would have to figure out forward rather than turning. Because while you're out here, every time you try to go to use the rope, he almost thinks you want him to move the hindquarters away.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. You'll see in a minute. I get the flag, so I don't know if that's appropriate or not, but
Think of your long reins, the part between, because you're trying to manage all the loops, find a way to
mm-hmm.
focus on the feel, just like riding reins, whether we're riding
Yeah.
on the buckle or on a short rein, the feel of the reins has nothing to do with the length of the rein,
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
right? So, like, he's so good about you tossing the rope that you could
Mm,
just get it tossed over him and go start driving him forward from behind. If you think that would be easier, just start there.
I might do. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, because he's confident with it. And then once you get him moving forward, you can shift your position while he's moving from behind the tail to the inside in line with where the
Mhm.
saddle would go. You can move that position back and forth during motion.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
think of the reins. Imagine they're as short as riding reins. How are you going to get him
Mm-hmm.
to go forward? Well, you have your leg aid, right? So you have your hand you could tap him with. But if
Yeah.
you were closer to him, yeah, like that at that distance and in that position, he starts to get the idea. But you see
Yeah.
how both of your reins between your hand and his head should
Very
doesn't
loose.
need really, yeah, it's pretty loose, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Which
Yeah.
is fine for now, but you have no control when it's that loose. And once you get
Mm-hmm.
the rein, like we'll go back through, and once you get the rein over his back around the hindquarter, you have an outside rein to pull on if he tries to face you. So when it's
Yeah.
on his back like this, it's nothing. It's just sitting there
Mm.
doing nothing. But once you
Yeah.
get it
Yeah.
around the hind legs, you have it to use as a left rein.
Mm-hmm.
So he shouldn't be able to face you, right?
No, because you have to
Because
pull
you
it
could pull the
straight.
rein. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
But when we think of it like lunging, we're just sort of trying to get a position, and that's when the horse outmaneuvers you. So all of
Yeah.
this
He's
part is
pretty good
good.
at that.
Like I would say, when you put the long reins on, I don't think you need this time with the outside rein over his back and then slowly putting it behind his butt. I think you could
Yeah.
start at halt, go ahead and put
Mm-hmm.
it over his back around the hind legs, and then go forward.
Yeah.
I
Okay.
think he'd be very confident with that from what I'm seeing. Like he's so
Mm-hmm.
confident. When it starts to go behind
Yeah.
his hind legs, there's just not a defensive glitch
No, he's not
anywhere.
worried.
Yeah.
No, he's a good boy.
So now this is where the right amount of tension is what you have to learn.
Mm-hmm.
So with
Yeah.
all those extra bits in your hand, it's hard to adjust the tension on the lines quickly by lengthening and
Mm-hmm.
shortening, right?
Yeah.
And you can lengthen and shorten either rein at any time, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so like this is working pretty well. And once that is it pink? Once the pink line goes around and down behind the tail, you have steering.
Mm-hmm.
Right
Yeah.
now, you don't yet have steering, but you almost have the reins for steering.
Yep.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. His
So like,
tail has straightened out so much. I don't know if you ever noticed when we first started, his tail was to the side,
yeah,
like crooked, and now he's straight, which is good to see.
yeah, his body looks a lot better. And I'm not like there now. If you pull on the pink rein, every time
Mm-hmm.
there, yes, like
Yep.
that. Then he goes, well, then I'm not moving. That's a normal response. No big deal.
Yeah.
Right? But as soon as you
Yep.
feel you
Yep.
have to lift your arm on the inside rein, it means the
Just short.
outside rein needs to be pulled.
Okay. Yep.
Yeah.
Pull them back out onto the.
Yeah.
Yep.
So
Okay.
basically, when you're on a circle, your body is the center point of the circle. When your
Mm-hmm.
inside rein is a radius to the circle,
Mm-hmm.
right? So when he puts slack on your inside rein, you can shorten it up to make a smaller circle because he's loosening the radius as he moves his body
Yeah.
inward, right? The
Yep.
other
Yep.
option is if you pulled that pink line really hard right now, it would come
Mm-hmm.
above his hocks and it would
Yep.
turn him away from you, right? So rather than
Yep.
trying to get in a position, if you just shorten it and pull it, it would do both of those jobs
Mm-hmm.
at the same time. Yeah.
Yep. Yep.
Same thing there. If you pull, it's just a normal right and left rein. Once you have,
Yeah. To keep them straighter. Yep.
yeah, once you have a rein on either side, it's a left and right rein, just like riding. So whatever he
Yep.
throws at you, like where you're focusing on trying to keep the rein above the hock, just shorten
Mm.
it and start using it like a rein. And
Yeah. Okay.
he's really good natured about this, you know, he's really,
Yeah.
yeah, you do
Yeah.
not have a confidence issue or a defensive issue, but the long reins will be physically challenging for him. And that's the point of working on them.
Yeah. Okay.
So
Okay. Yep.
physically, for him, physically, it's easier if you work directly behind him and walk on a straight line. It's going
Yeah.
to, it won't require as much engagement or stability through the hindquarters when you do it like that.
Mm-hmm.
Once he's on a circle, it requires more hindquarter engagement for the same balance on a circle. So
Yeah.
if I have a horse that offers me a lot of forward energy, the long reins on a circle is a quick way to slow them down. But
Okay.
if I have a horse that's resisting forward, then I might start the long rein work. Like he's really not keen to go forward anymore. So
No.
you go, great. The benefit is he's calm, he's not defensive, he's not snarky, but he's just going, yeah, you and who else, right? Or who's going to make me go forward,
Yeah. I can
right?
smart you, woman.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So if you
Yeah. He's
were
just having a bit of a
closer,
laugh at me, really.
yeah, I know they really do.
Yeah.
It's, and you know what? It's funny because I've worked through myself what you're going through, and all of us have.
Yeah.
So the tip is go
Yeah.
closer,
Okay. That's
treat it
nice.
like a rein. And
Okay.
I wouldn't even bother anymore with the stages of introduction where you have to put it slowly down the back. Like right there, I would stop
Okay. He's
him.
pretty fine. So,
He's pretty what?
yeah. He's pretty fine with it now, so I can just put it behind his back legs and yeah. I don't
Yeah.
need to do the gradual move down his back.
No.
Yep.
No, he's good. So
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. That's
not to torture you, but I want to
so
just
with the
pause it.
so okay. So when I'll get closer to him and treat it like I'm kind of riding with the reins. I get that. Now I'll have that image in my head, and then I'll go behind him and do some straight lines. Is the idea that eventually also being able to do it on the circle, but with shorter reins and keeping them on the circle? Is that the
Yes.
idea?
I mean,
Yes. Okay.
basically, the long reins act as close to riding as we can get. And
Mm-hmm.
so we can do all kinds of paths of travel, big circles, little circles, figure eights, straight lines, anything you can do under saddle, you can pretty much do on the long reins. And so
Yeah.
you can really play with giving him the same kind of support to change his balance as if he were being ridden without having
Mm-hmm.
weight on his back, because I know you said he had a saddle issue and you haven't been
He
on
had
him for a long time.
yeah, kissing spine, mild kissing spine, and he was bucking a bit, and he just was not happy under saddle. And I haven't ridden him for probably about 2 years.
Yeah. So the remedy to kissing spine is long and low,
Mm-hmm.
right? And
Yep.
ultimately lifting the back. But
Yep.
so here, this is what I just wanted to point out. If you moved your body from where it is right in here next to the barrel,
Mm-hmm.
right? Then you can let all this go with the outside rein. So if you're standing here and the rein is coming around, the part that goes is connected between your hand and his head is where you need to keep the tension. And so
Yep.
you will find it a lot easier to let the excess drag on the ground. And
Because it's just going to go behind me.
as
Yeah.
you walk forward, it will be behind both of you. But
Yeah. Okay.
the part that's between your hand and his head is the important part. And so
Mm-hmm.
like here, you have now the inside rein is the pink one, and it's gathered up about a lead rope length.
Mm-hmm.
That's perfect. That's fine. You could leave that short. That one you will
Mm-hmm.
have to kind of carry in your hand until you get behind him.
Yep.
But if you walked here straight in, you'd see how much
Mm-hmm.
easier it would be to put that over his back around his butt,
Yep. And hold
right?
it.
And hold it. And then you could tap the back with your hand, you could tap his butt with your hand, or you could teach him a little slap with the rein against the crook of the hind legs. That can also
Yep.
mean forward.
And it's always the outside rein that you tap to go forward.
Nope, it's the loose
Doesn't
rein.
matter.
Doesn't matter. Um,
Okay.
yeah, it's usually the loose rein. And
Okay.
right now, as you're introducing things, it'll be easier for you to ask him forward with the outside rein as the two of
Mm-hmm.
you are learning, because that way your inside rein is kind of like just there as your safety net. And you're going to
Mm-hmm.
play with your body closer to him, almost like you're going to walk parallel with him. Even if you
Mm-hmm.
don't have steering at first, just get the forward going.
Yeah. Okay. Yep.
Yeah. And then if you go behind him, it's just like riding. You're working on both reins the same, depending on where you want to go, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then when you actually work on the sort of physical part of balance on a circle, we'll regroup when you get there. But right now, it's
Okay.
just sort of,
Yep. Yep.
yeah.
Just go forward.
And because he's resisting forward, I would, if I were working him, I would think about doing the driving from behind to get him
Mm-hmm.
comfortable going forward before I would try really working on circles.
Okay. Yep. Makes
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah. So you can introduce it still, but like you don't need to do the whole thing down his back. That's usually just the first time or two until they feel confident with the rein. He's
Mm-hmm.
he's very confident with it. You're fine.
Yeah. Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah.
Not worry. Which is
Yeah.
good to know.
So you could probably even start like next to the barrel, and then as soon as you get him taking a few steps, you could drop in behind the tail.
Mm-hmm.
And then you can use either rein for forward with a little tap against his belly,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yep.
or you could you can use either rein for steering. And sometimes
Yep.
that's the easier way to learn the long reins because it's more like riding.
Yeah. Yep. Yep.
But
And you've got a lot more, if they go to turn, you can then kind of, yeah, hold them in place a lot easier.
yeah, the only tricky part about working directly behind them is if we have a tendency to be a fast walker and the horse is a slow walker, we're going to kind of end up too close to the hindquarters pretty often, or we're going to have a lot of slack in the reins.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, you're always trying to get a light connection on both reins. And
Mm-hmm.
the way you want to do that in the beginning is keep adjusting the length of rein in order to keep the same light amount of tension.
Okay.
So
Yep.
if he pulls on you, you can let either rein or both get longer. And if
Mm-hmm.
he, if he puts slack in the line, shorten them up so that they don't feel loose.
Yep. Okay.
So the way I talk about it is I go, if 0 is sort of heavy or 0 is very light and 10 is pulling, I look for a 3, 4, 5 amount of tension,
Yep.
right?
Okay.
So
Mm-hmm.
that's right here. What you have is kind of a 3 to me, just a light tension that kind of
Mm-hmm.
keeps the connection between me and the horse. And
Yep.
when you walk behind him, if he's slow and the reins keep getting loose, you have to go slightly slower than him to keep the
Mm-hmm.
reins from getting too slack.
Okay.
And
Yep.
if he walks fast and the reins get tight and you feel like he's pulling on you, you just have to speed up to match his speed and he'll quit
Yeah.
pulling on you, right?
Okay. All
And
right.
then that's where at a certain point, if we can't go as fast as the horse, that's when we need a circle.
Yeah. Okay. That's good to know. And you'll see in my next video, I've got a flag. Do you suggest if he's reluctant to go forward just by using the reins, should I use a flag or no?
I don't know if I got a second video. Hang on a second.
Oh, is it?
Let me
I
double
think it's on
check.
the same email, but maybe not.
Let me double check.
Yep.
There's stitch number 1. Oh, there is a second one. Hang on, let me. Oh, no, that's just a. Nope, that's not the video.
Didn't come through properly.
Let me click on, hang on.
I can share it with you now if that's.
I think this might be the same one. So there is a link and there is a little picture,
Yeah.
but I think, no, they're both titled Stitch 704 number 1.
Oh, not number one and number two?
Nope, I got number 1 and number 1.
Oh, that's very helpful. Sorry.
I
I've just sent
know.
you, I've just emailed you number two now.
Okay,
See if that comes through. Sorry about that.
that's all right.
I try and do these things on my phone and sometimes it doesn't work that well.
I know, right? Okay.
It's not like doing it on your computer, is it?
I know there's some things that are just better on the computer, and then there's some things that I do most of my business on my phone, I have to say, but there are a
Oh,
few things that are just easier done on the computer.
yeah.
Okay, so now I've got number 2. Hang on, I've lost you. Where'd you go? Oh, there you are. Okay. Sorry, I had about 6 different things open on my desktop too. All
Okay.
right, so let me share that.
I mean, it's very much the same, so probably doesn't. added too much.
Yeah. Can you see it?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah. And you see, this is where it's everybody does it. It kind of works, but it's a lot to manage. And so you
Yeah.
end up really losing the purpose of it. The feel of the reins is really the purpose of this exercise. And once we start needing extra equipment, but do you see what I mean? That you're trying to approach it like lunging.
Oh yeah, yeah. I definitely had it in my head that I was lunging just with an outside rein. That's
Yeah, and
yeah.
and that is it is accurate. That's what it becomes. But it really is more of a driving exercise, a pushing sort of riding simulation than it is more like lunging. Oh yeah,
Yeah.
and this
Yeah.
is perfect timing for him because you can see in the few steps he takes, he's gotten really unstable from the lunging because he's loosened up quite a bit. And that's
Mm-hmm.
why his his tail is straightened out a bit. He's much more pleasant, easy to work with, but it's like he's
Mm-hmm.
wobbly like Pablo is now. And
Yeah. Yeah.
so
It's all
he,
over the place.
yeah. And so the long reins are absolutely the right thing to do with him. And it's just like there again, you see all this slack on the inside rein between
Yeah.
your hand and his head. That's why you
Yeah.
lack the control.
Yeah.
Yeah. And see
Yeah.
when you go a little bit closer to him, there you go. You got it going.
Yeah.
Yeah. But here your inside rein is too loose and your outside rein is too tight. You could get it around his butt. I mean, right now
Yes.
it's not too tight because it's not doing anything. You're just
Doing
getting
anything.
him used to it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that kind of worked. He got the idea.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's why you want to get the outside rein over his back is what you're doing with the flag to push him out is what you're going to
Mm-hmm.
do with the outside rein.
Yeah. Makes sense. Yeah.
And he may try to stop a bit if you're on a circle. And I would just try to shift to a straight line. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
you're managing the flag really, really well. But you can see there's not a lot of connection through the reins. And
No.
we need the connection in order to change his balance. So that's what you
Yeah.
kind of want
Okay.
to develop with your hands. And I think he'll be a little more keen to go forward when the reins aren't so loose. When he feels that support and he gets the
Yeah. Okay.
stability, it
Mm-hmm.
usually helps the wobbly horses go more forward.
Okay. Yep.
Yeah, and see, even when you throw the rope, he's like, "Yeah, so what? No big deal."
Yeah. Not phased. Not
Yeah,
phased.
you're way done with the introduction phase. Yeah. So
Yeah. Okay.
so just manage the reins in a way that's easiest for you to get a rein on either side of him, get him going
Mm-hmm.
forward, and then play with using the outside rein for steering on a circle
Mm-hmm.
or go
Mm-hmm.
behind him and just think of it as, ground driving or driving in a carriage or riding from the ground. It's very directly similar.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
But yeah, you've worked it out really well. This is the hardest groundwork exercise that I teach, and it kind of takes years to really master it, but it's once you get the
Good
hang
to
of
know.
it, yeah,
Yeah.
once you start to get the hang of it, which you're very close to, I think you'll have a lot of fun doing it because especially with horses that really, are resisting being ridden, can't handle being ridden, have back issues, you can basically like I met some Irish guys in Kentucky and they were watching me long rein and they go, "Oh yeah, that's how we backed all our young horses in Ireland. We, put the long reins on and went pub to pub all around the county."
Wow.
And that's how they broke in their green horses.
Wow. Well, I was
So
thinking once I get really good at it, might even take them for like a little bushwalk with them.
yeah,
Is that safe, or you'd suggest not?
it's safe once you know how to transition very quickly from behind to a circle.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
And the only thing on a bushwalk you want to be mindful of is you don't get in a place where you couldn't make a circle if you had to. So you don't want
Ah.
to
Okay.
you don't want to get into the trees and that kind of thing. It can become a big hot mess.
Ah. Okay. Yeah. Our property's got quite a bit of trees, so maybe not then.
Hmm. I mean, once you get better at it, you'll know when you can do it. But um,
Mhm.
if the horse gets reactive and you don't have room to take the horse around you, you're a bit stuck.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. Yeah. It could be a bit tricky.
yeah. And then things get wrapped around trees or, you run out of room and it can get
Yeah.
a little bit like a bag of rats. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
okay, that's lovely. Yeah. So there, the flipping the rein over his back was a little bit, again, the farther away you are, the harder it is to get the right amount of tension in the reins. The closer
Yes.
you are, the easier it will be. So, like when he tosses his head like that, you have to quickly loosen the rein, gather the rein, lengthen the rein, shorten the rein. So that's why I'm
Yeah.
thinking get all that mess out of your hands where you can just reach up the reins. And if you're closer, yeah, you'll get the right tension in the rein a lot quicker. But yeah,
Yeah.
he's just giving you trouble. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. He's like, I'm not doing this.
Yeah.
And
But
do you kind of stand out of kicking distance at the back?
Oh yeah, definitely stay out of kicking distance. And
Yeah.
if he backs up, back up with him. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? But you can also be a little bit off to one side. You could be just like 45 degrees off the hip rather than
Mm-hmm.
directly behind.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or if you're closer, I think you can get the ball rolling from one side of him, which would be safer if you think he might kick out. You could get it
Yeah.
rolling if you're a little closer to the barrel. He couldn't
Mm-hmm.
outmaneuver you quite so much.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. I don't think he'd kick out, but you just never know, do you?
You never know. And I always just stay out of kicking distance in case,
Yeah.
you just never know. And some of them will kick out, not even intending to hurt you, but if you're in the wrong place at the wrong time, it's still
Yeah.
bad.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, like here, as calm as he is, right from where you are, as you go closer, I would stay that close where you are right now.
Mm-hmm.
Get the rein behind his tail before you ask him to move.
Yep.
Because when it's over the back in the introduction phase, it's just there to see how they cope with the feel of it. He's
Mm-hmm.
fine. He's fine with the feel
Yeah.
of that. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, but well done, like to kind of figure this out and stick with it. And he's confident with it, but it's not helping him get the stability in forward motion, which is why you're battling this sort of lack of desire for him to go forward. And as soon as
Yeah.
you ask him to be straighter, it'll be a little bit like what you found out with Pablo. Going straighter is harder than just going forward, going
Yeah.
straight, forward. And so he may fight you on the reins a little bit, but if
Mm-hmm.
if you're close enough to adjust the length of both reins quickly, you'll get really good at him not outmaneuvering you. Because
Yeah.
right
Yeah. Okay.
now he just goes, yeah, if I do this, she does that. If I do that,
Yeah.
she does this.
I'm
And then
doing more walking than him.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, these horses that tend to be a little on the snarky side, they're also wicked smart and they figure out very
Oh,
quickly how to
Yeah,
get the
he's very
human
smart.
to do more work. But see, he's
Yeah.
fine with that. So there,
Yeah.
if you're out of kicking distance, you could even be a little bit to one side. You want the reins a tiny bit looser if he's high-headed. So like there where the rein goes, once it passes midway on the barrel, he could flip it over his
Hmm.
back. And that's what he
Yeah.
did. So
Yeah.
as soon as the rein is like hitting the middle of the barrel, you need to quickly loosen it
Hmm.
up. As soon as it's
Right.
getting
Okay.
as soon as it's getting sort of near the hock, you need to tighten it up,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So
So it sits.
somewhere
It sits.
it has to sit
Yeah.
somewhere.
In between that.
Yeah. Yeah. Think of aiming for
Hmm.
sort of like between the stifle and the hock and between
Hmm.
the elbow and the knee, what we call the elbow and the knee. That's kind of the sweet spot, almost the bottom half of the barrel. And so if he tosses his
Yeah.
head or he pulls on the rein, if you don't let the rein slide, it very quickly goes up the barrel and then over the back. And then
Hmm.
if he comes too close or doesn't move, or he moves slower than you do, and the reins become loose, you quickly lose control over the steering because there's no tension there. So
Hmm.
just getting like where I think you've been focusing your efforts is sort of like, okay, how do I manage these two reins like lunging and get him to go with a flag? And
Hmm.
um, I would concentrate more on going closer and get the tension of the reins more
Yes.
consistent. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
No matter how you do that, but all of this
Mhm.
looseness in the reins is why you're having the issues you're having. Kind of the
Yeah. Yeah.
distance you're trying to work from and the
Yeah.
looseness of the reins is why he goes, oh yeah, I could just, do this and it'll take her 5 minutes to regroup.
It looks so obvious now watching it on video. It's like, oh my God, why was I doing that?
Yeah, no, we all go through this and I think that's
Yeah.
why people go, oh, this is impossible without a surcingle. And it's very possible, but it requires the feel of riding.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so when you think
Like
of
you
it,
say, like reins. Yeah.
yeah. And so when you think of it more like riding than lunging, even though if you're watching it, it looks like lunging with an outside rein. But when you're actually doing it, it feels like riding or driving a cart. It's that same kind of rein connection.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, that's good to know.
Yeah.
I don't know if he does it in this video, but and it's something he used to do quite a bit, but he's stopped doing it. He crosses his back legs like this. Have you ever seen that before?
When he's resting or in motion.
When he's resting.
Yeah, and you can even see in motion, he lands a little bit oblique with both hind legs. That's just
Mm,
the weakness, right?
okay.
So
Yeah.
when he's going forward and his neck is long, you don't see him step into the midline, but if you kind of watch as he comes around a circle, the hind legs are stepping inward a little to the midline, like
Mhm.
they're not square behind the front legs, and that's just
Okay.
a weakness through the hindquarters. That's exactly
Yeah.
why we're doing this is to kind of build it up.
Hmm. Yeah.
So, but yeah, he's just, and people call it base narrow or they would call it sickle hawked, but it's not a permanent issue. It's just, like I said, when we looked at that tensegrity model, when you're
Hmm.
working, when you're working behind the horse, ground driving, you're really trying to reduce any and all lateral bend through his midline.
Yeah.
And you've got
Yeah.
two reins to do that. And
Hmm.
he's a little bit too big for you to see down his midline when you're back there. But
Mm.
sometimes when you can see it, all of a sudden the penny drops. You start to go, oh, now I see how this works. But
Yeah.
basically,
Yeah.
it's like when you're directly behind him on two reins, if the right rein gets tight, the left rein will get loose. And even before you can see it, you feel as the right rein tension increases and the left decreases, his spine is on a left lateral bend.
Yeah, okay.
So
Yeah.
when we get to the subtle version or the more refined version of the long reins, the feel of the reins tells you about the internal straightness.
Mm.
And when you're working behind the horse, you're directly addressing the alignment of the spine by reducing all excessive, actually all lateral bending of the spine. When
Yeah,
you're
yeah. What
when
he
you're
needs.
working from the inside, when you work on one static rein and the adjustable outside rein, you're
Hmm.
addressing a different function more directly. You're addressing the rotation function more than the
Right.
lateral bending function. But the
Yeah.
fact that the long reins from the ground dir directly affects two spinal functions,
Hmm.
it is what makes it sort of, you get as much of a change in the balance as you would riding.
Okay. Well, that's good to know.
Yeah,
Um, I can only really work with them three, maximum four times a week because I work full time. I just run out of time.
that's
Um,
fine.
is that enough? I
Yeah,
mean, it'd be better obviously if it could be more, but yeah,
yeah. And
that would
as
be enough
he,
to go some difference, make some
a-
difference.
absolutely, because
Mm.
sometimes the resting days, when you're going through these initial changes, like you found with Pablo, sometimes it can be very fatiguing to start
Hmm.
working those core muscles.
Yeah.
And it looks like Stitch, who now really wants to lengthen his top line more than I've seen before, right?
Mm.
Now he looks wobbly and long and loose, where when you started with him on the lunging, he was sort of bunchy and upside down and tight, right?
Yeah.
So you've made
Yeah.
a huge breakthrough, and it's time for him to have a little bit of guidance to improve the coordination to get to the next step. So
Hmm.
just like with Pablo, you're going to be working deeper core muscles, and 4 times a week can be plenty.
Hmm.
And you should start to see some changes as the two of you kind of get rolling. Like right now, you're in the first time under saddle phase of the long reins. You know, it's not
Yeah.
pretty, the horse doesn't go
Yep.
forward, but as you start
Yeah.
to get the hang of that and you just sort of take him around the arena, nothing too specific. Once
Hmm.
that's easy for both of you, then we can look at more detail on really changing his balance within the same exercise.
Yeah. Okay. Yep.
Yeah.
That sounds good.
Yeah. But the first layer is sort of working through this like
Getting
getting
that
the tech
sorted.
getting the technique down,
Yeah.
getting the
Yeah.
technique down for us, but also getting the horse, like when they're new to the long reins, that sometimes is the toughest period to get them going. So the two of you are learning together, and that's not a
Hmm.
pretty or easy process, and you're doing fine. But like I
Yeah.
said, if you go into the shoulder or the barrel, you would have this sorted in 1 second.
Yeah. Yeah. In fact, I'm going to do it this afternoon, and I can already see it's going to be a lot easier.
Oh, good. Yeah, because you look
Yeah.
more tired than he looks.
Yeah. Yeah. Got the steps up. Mm. Yeah. It's funny.
Yeah.
The other day I thought you know how I'm walking Pablo just on straight lines around
Hmm.
the arena. I thought I'd try the same with Stitch just to see if he's ready now that he's lost a little bit of defensiveness. It wasn't any good. He was still, in fact, he got quite excited, as if I don't know why. It I don't know if it triggered him or don't know. He was not calm at
Yeah.
all. Even walking in a straight line. It was
No, do you know,
yeah.
like it's sort of like people. Horses that tend to be pushy, snarky, nip, bite, step on us, all of those are sort of mild or maybe moderate expressions of the fight defensive strategy.
Mm-hmm.
And horses that adopt that strategy as their MO usually do it because they have a level of discomfort in their body where movement is not super comfortable. And
Mm.
and being touched for some reason, they don't like being touched. And
No.
so they have these enormous personal space bubbles until you really start to get changes in the body that make movement more comfortable for them, which,
Mm-hmm.
we've just sort of gotten through the first layer. We're starting into the next layer. And you can
Yeah.
see his attitude has improved with the first layer, but I'm not surprised. And I figured that's why you went to the long reins, is he's not ready like to even have anybody in his space while he's working. Like horses that
No.
go to that defensive pattern, they don't want to be touched a lot. They like a lot of personal space and distance. And so sending them out and away from us actually makes them feel more comfortable than when we're in close proximity. So
Yeah. Yeah.
I wasn't sure the hand walking would work for him for that reason, but you tried and
Yeah.
you can come back to it and try again. But it looks like you're going to have to, kind of knuckle your way through the long reins, the learning curve of
Yeah.
the long reins,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
that
We'll
will
get
give
there.
you, yeah, because that will give you the distance that he wants to feel comfortable.
Yeah. Whilst it's straightening up his body.
Yes, and it'll
Mm.
be a
Yeah.
way to touch him through the long reins, which will start to reduce that defensiveness of being touched, but it's
Mm-hmm.
it's not kind of your energy right there in his space. It's a little removed,
Yeah.
and
Yeah. Yeah.
they just it's like some people love hugs and other people don't. And
Yeah.
he's just
He's not
not
a
a
huggy horse.
no, he's not a huggy, touchy, feely, cuddly guy.
No.
So being respectful of the fact that he likes having his space for now is how you build
Mm-hmm.
trust, and it's actually how you will bond with him. And he will
Mm-hmm.
become snuggly one day, but he's got to get a little more comfortable inside his own skin first.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, like even my toughest a horse I've had with me for years, it's a client's horse. He was very much that way to the extreme. And finally, as his body felt better, he actually got very sweet and kind of snuggly and much
Oh,
more
so there's hope
gentle.
for us.
Yeah,
There's hope for us. Okay.
yeah,
It's nice to know.
yeah. And you can see like that defensiveness kind of comes off in layers. And right now, you released the tension, which was creating the most defensiveness, but he doesn't
Mm-hmm.
have any stability, and so he still hasn't dropped that. He's he's fine. I'm not saying he's even defensive in this video at all, but he's like, yeah, I don't think I want to go forward though. I'm too
Yeah.
wobbly. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And if I went up to give him a scratch, he'd give me a nip. He's
Yeah.
still, I could still feel that vibe from him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you go up and whack him with your hand and send him away from you, he'll be fine with that.
Mm.
And if you need like, I would maybe get a riding whip, something short that is, and the
Mm-hmm.
flag is working pretty well, but maybe
Mm-hmm.
something that's a little lighter, that if you feel like you need a whip, which you may do for just the first 2, 3 sessions to get the ball rolling, like you did
Mm-hmm.
with the flag. You could carry
Yep.
this flag with you because it's pretty light, or you could get something smaller and lighter that's just easier to manage until he finally
Mm-hmm.
goes, okay, I guess I have to go forward.
Yeah. Yeah. He gets a little bit annoyed at whips. I might stick with the flag. He seems to.
Oh, okay. Yeah, whatever works for
Yeah.
him, but you shouldn't
Yeah.
need that long term. You're you're
No.
you're just going to use it to kind of get the ball rolling while you're getting the feel of the reins and getting the coordination yourself for the exercise. And if he
Mm-hmm.
continues Once you go on straight lines and you work behind him, I don't think you'll need the flag at all. I think he'll go forward.
No. Yep. Yep. Okay.
But
I'm
the
excited to try it
circles,
now.
yeah, the circles will be kind of hard for him.
Yeah.
So,
Okay. So we'll just stick with straight lines as much as
mhm.
possible. Yeah.
Yeah, and you
Okay.
can
That's good.
start with a circle or two to get organized. You can even just walk next to him a little bit without steering until he's finally going forward. And then once
Hmm.
he's really thinking forward, because as long as he's halting a lot or pinning his ears at you, those are the signs telling you you might get kicked if you're back there.
Yeah.
If
Yeah.
if he's
Yeah.
freely moving forward and he's really walking out and he's mostly concentrating, doesn't look snarky, you're pretty safe to go in behind him and keep going.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, but he's a funny guy. He's not sure why you keep putting this thing over his back. He goes, I don't see the point. I'm fine with
What
it.
are you?
Yeah, what are we doing?
Yeah.
Yeah. And he goes, oh, with two ropes in her hands, I can really get a lot done before she can correct me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. He had me sussed out pretty quick.
Yeah.
Mm.
But yeah, I think his attitude looks better. His body looks a lot softer. Oop, that was a shoulder clunk. Did we talk about those before?
No.
That was an awesome one.
What did you call it? A shoulder clunk.
Yeah, that's my technical term for it. Right there. Did you see where that front left leg buckled?
Oh, yes. Sorry, I remember him doing it. In fact, I think I spoke to myself at the time.
Yeah. So I call them shoulder clunks. I don't know why it happens all at once, but as the hindquarter and the back become more and more stable, all of the residual long-term chronic tension, all those rubber bands that were over tightened around the thoracic sling and through the neck, they seem to
Hmm.
change either suddenly or they have a change of tone, tension, that suddenly it looks like the left, or it looks like a front leg would just fall off, or it feels like they step in a hole. And
Yeah.
what that is a sudden change in muscle tone.
Yeah.
Because
Okay.
the front legs are just in slings of muscle. And
Hmm.
that's actually a really good sign. The more you see it, the more he's releasing long-term tightness around the front legs, upper back, and neck, where he used to be stabilizing his body primarily. They only do
Ah,
that when they start to stabilize their movement through the back and the hindquarters a little better.
yeah. Okay.
That's what allows that muscle tension to change up front.
Hmm.
And and you could massage it till the cows come home, but as long as he's moving in a way that he needs that stability on the front end, that
Yeah, it's not going to let
tightness,
go.
it would never go away, right?
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
does go away, and this is one of the important signs that he is starting to find better engagement, more stability through the back and hindquarters, is you'll get these sudden there clunk. Oh yeah, you
Yeah.
jumped. You jumped when he did it
Yeah.
too. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm
And
very
so
flighty.
yeah, that's not unusual. And you may see that more and more. It's also not
Okay.
unusual that sometimes they have these spontaneous chiropractic adjustments. And that's what I mean when we're focused on just the midline, right? Or what
Hmm.
you did, kind of what you did with the lunging when he's changing from the posture of extension would be basically, hang on a second,
That. Yeah.
right? So if this is the back,
Hmm.
extension is doing this. And you see if I push this down, how it twists the body as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's why
And
they
his
get
shoulder is twisted, isn't it?
not so much anymore. So
Okay,
when
you can see it.
when they're in long and low, they're not really lifting the back. They're just no longer pushing the back down. It's
Yeah,
kind of
okay.
a restoration of
Yep.
muscle tone. When the
Yep.
back is actually pushing down, what happens is you have a lot of tightness in different rubber bands.
Mm.
So
Yeah, yeah,
no matter how much you massage it, every step he takes, he's doing that, that,
yeah,
tightening the
yeah.
rubber bands, right? So
Yep.
long and low is just sort of a releasing of all tension. And that's why he
Mhm.
looks so loose and wobbly, is because
Yeah,
it was his muscles that were keeping him stable. And we're trying to
yeah.
shift that into a skeletal coordination, right? So when the
Hmm.
skeleton is all in the right place, when you're moving, there's changes in tension and tone through the muscle, but it restores
Hmm.
back to neutral.
Yeah, yeah. Okay.
When
Yep.
they're crooked, that's like a chronic tightness, right?
Hmm.
So that's kind of where you're at is he's almost so loose. What the long reins are basically going to do, like here's the human and the horse is just this way, right?
Yep.
So what the long reins are going to do is like if he tries to bend, you're going to feel more tension on one rein or the other. So even
Yep.
without seeing it, right, you're going to straighten the midline by saying don't bend,
Hmm.
resist by resisting the bend.
Hmm.
And
Yep.
that's when
Yep.
we work behind them, that's what we're doing.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's good.
Yeah. So
Very exciting.
excellent.
Good to
Yeah.
see that because after that I thought, my gosh, are we actually making any progress? This is looking shocking, but no, good to know that we're,
Yeah.
even though it was not great, but we're on the way.
You were very creative. You did great. And he really cooperated with you quite well. And he didn't look
Yeah.
perturbed. Like he didn't,
No, no.
he actually
It was,
looked pretty patient with the whole thing, but he was just playing
yeah,
games in a
yeah.
funny,
He's actually, yeah, I think he's actually enjoying coming out, doing his little sessions in the arena. You know,
great.
he comes to wait at the fence for me, and they all line up like, is it my turn, my turn? So then yeah, they must be liking it.
Yeah.
Yeah, which
Yeah.
is
And
good.
that's what I mean, that it's sort of self-rewarding work because
Mm,
when we're working on the coordination, going towards an ideal according to the design of the body. So
yeah,
optimal balance means the function of the body is as efficient as possible according to its mechanical design,
yeah. Okay.
right? And we're
Mhm.
not really moving body parts. We're kind of playing with forces of motion, guiding and channeling the horse. And you're going to really feel that on the long reins, just like
Mm,
riding, where when you go behind him, it's going to be tight on one side, loose on the other, and bounce back and forth and be a bit of a mess at first. And then it'll
yeah,
kind of line up.
yeah. Okay. Do you think I should start this with Pablo as well, or just keep hand walking him?
Well, if he can't go forward from hand walking, then
He's
the
not
long
going to do
reins. Well, I mean,
He's not going to do anything.
as soon as I say that, horses make a liar out of me all the time. So you could try it. He might really
I
like it.
bet you're right though. He's probably not going to go forward. We're still having a lot of challenges with him going forward. But having said that, we do, we get. I try to do 20 minutes. It's very broken up with a lot of stops, but try and
Hmm.
do 20 minutes. And I've noticed his body looks so much different even in the paddock. He's no longer getting around like in extension. He's quite flat walking around. So yeah,
Excellent.
he looks a lot better. Yeah.
Excellent.
So yeah,
Yeah,
it's just not
because
forward yet. We're still having issues there, but that's okay.
and that's fine. It's like whatever works for him, but better is always good and we can build on it.
Mm,
And so
mm-hmm.
you think tapping a horse with a whip from the ground to hand walk would be no big deal. And then Pablo said, "I'm sorry, excuse me, this is a big deal." So you go, "Okay,
Mm,
we can adjust." So
yeah.
the easiest way to encourage forward motion from the horse's perspective is sort of the human in front of them, and then
Mm-hmm.
they follow you basically,
Yeah.
and you use a
Yeah.
lead rope if they don't. The next
Mm-hmm.
challenging is sort of being at the shoulder and using a whip to say go forward. And like you're
Mm-hmm.
finding with Stitch, the most challenging is a very light tap with a loose rein. I go, that's, they have
He's
to
like,
really
what's
be
going to do?
thinking forward to be able to do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. All right. We'll continue with hand walking and with Pablo.
Yeah, and I mean, try it because it would be good for you to keep practicing on the long reins. And if it
Mhm.
doesn't work, it doesn't work. Fine.
Yeah.
But it
Yeah.
might
Yeah.
work. And if it did work, that could be it would be a more supportive way to get changes with Pablo. So
Hmm.
the long reins are where you're going to get the most physical changes because you're guiding every step.
Yeah. It's very structured, isn't it? Yeah.
Hmm.
Controlled.
And
Yeah.
then the hand walking is sort of the next level down. And then
Hmm.
leading, which is what you're doing with Pablo, or lunging like you did with Stitch, that's
Hmm.
just you're not going to get a lot of change. You're going to get some initial changes, but it's more a
Hmm.
process of discovery than it is guidance.
Support. Yeah. Yeah.
Hmm.
Okay. Yeah. 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 That's good.
Yeah.
Very good.
Any other questions?
No, no, that's brilliant. Thank you. Very
Okay.
good.